A while ago, I showed you all how to make an easy dough recipe with endless possibilities. However, some of my baking friends have since requested a similar recipe without any dairy due to their dietary restrictions. Hello and welcome to Jackson's Job. In a large bowl, I have some all-purpose or plain flour. 2 cups of flour, I weigh that out to be 300 grams. To that, I'm going to add in some sugar. The sugar is essential for this recipe. I'm using 2 tablespoons of sugar, 25 grams, but if you want to cut it in half, you can do so. But you need at least 1 tablespoon, or 12.5 grams. To that, I'm going to add in a bit of salt, a half a teaspoon of salt, 2.5 grams. That gives you structure to the bread and helps it keep from being too dense, and it will balance out that sweetness. Next, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of instant dry yeast, that is 3 grams. And I like to use the instant dry yeast, but you can also use the fast-acting yeast or even the active dry yeast. You're just going to have to follow the manufacturer's instructions for those. We're going to mix this together briefly, and then we're going to add in our wet ingredients. In order to not use dairy, we're going to have to use some oil. I'm going to use 3 tablespoons, 45 milliliters, and you can use whatever type of oil you want. Canola, vegetable, olive oil. You can even use coconut oil and just melt it down first. To that, we're going to add in some water. We're going to use 2/3 of a cup or 160 milliliters. The water you just want at room temperature. If you wanted to speed up the process, you could make it lukewarm. But don't get it too hot or it will kill off the yeast. Now, using the handle of a spoon, I am just going to mix this together until it becomes a shaggy dough. If you wanted to use a stand mixer, you can do so. You would just follow your stand mixer's instructions and knead it from 8 to 12 minutes until it stretches easily without tearing. We're going to knead this 8 to 10 minutes until it stretches easily without tearing. At first, the dough could be either a little bit dry or a little bit sticky depending on how well you mix it in the beginning. That is completely normal. It may be crumbly at first and it'll be a little bit sticky, and when you pull at it, it tears apart really easy. All you have to do to knead this is push the dough away from you, fold it back toward itself, and then push away again. You can use your fingertips or the palm of your hand. I recommend the palm of your hand if you're going to do this long term because you don't want to hurt yourself. Don't worry if it's sticking to your hands, just keep working the dough. After 5 minutes of working the dough, if it's still sticking really badly, you can start to add a tablespoon of flour every couple of minutes. That's about 9 grams. But please bear with me and work with it without adding any flour a good 5 minutes. You want to give that flour a chance to hydrate, and if you start adding in flour too early, you're going to end up with a dense, dry dough. So work with it a good 5 minutes if you can before adding any flour. I recommend not adding any flour at all, but if you can't work with this dough, it's okay to add a little bit. I gave some leeway room for you guys. So it has been 5 minutes and this is becoming a really nice dough. As you see, it's quite elastic now, but it still tears apart really easily. So we're going to continue to knead this another few minutes and check back. Here it's been a few more minutes and it is no longer sticking to my hands, and I don't have much residue left on my fingers or the palms. You can feel that it's just a really nice, supple, stretchy dough, and that's what we are looking for. It is pretty sturdy, and when I try to stretch it out really thin, I can see my fingertips through the dough. That's called the window pane test. Now we just want to roll this up into a loose ball and put it back in our container and let this develop some flavor and grow in size. We're going to cover this and let it just rest. This can take a little bit longer if it's really cold in your house, and it could take no time at all if it's really hot in your house. I'm thinking of you, Gidget. When I press my fingers into the dough, it holds an indentation, but it's not immediately collapsing or bouncing back. It is really nice and stretchy, and once you're at this stage, you're ready to move forward. Now you can use this dough to replace any soft dough recipe you have. You can use this to make anything you can think of. But today we are going to keep this simple and we're just going to stick with some dinner rolls. We're going to make 9 pull-apart rolls. If you don't have a scale, now is the time to invest in one. However, if you don't have one, just eyeball it and divide this into 9 pieces as equally as you can. Take 8 of the pieces that you're not going to work with and stick them back in the bowl and let them sit there until you're ready to use it. So let's get one of the pieces of dough and flatten it out, and we're going to pull in the edges toward the center like I'm doing here. Once you get all the edges in toward the center, take the dough, place it seam side down, and start rolling it in the palm of your hand until you get a nice ball shape. This will take a little bit of skill and practice, but once you learn how to do it, you can do 2 of these at once. You are now going to place this ball seam side down into a greased baking sheet that is 8 inches or 20 centimeters. I am going to use cooking spray, but you could use oil or a nonstick pan. If you do use a nonstick pan, never ever spray it with nonstick spray. It will permanently mar your surface and it will make it useless. It'll basically make it a sticky pan. Repeat this process of rolling the dough into a ball for the remaining 8 pieces. Place them as evenly apart as possible in the tray, 3 across and 3 down. You now want to cover this with plastic wrap or a towel. I am going to lightly oil the plastic wrap. You could also spray it, and then I'm going to cover it. That way it won't stick to the dough as it rises. You are going to let this rest until it's double in size, and this can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, but it could take less time if it is hot in your house or a lot more time if it's really cold outside. So be patient. Once these have doubled in size or 45 minutes have passed, go ahead and turn on your oven and get it preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. Once the oven is preheated, you want to make sure you remove that plastic wrap and put it into the oven and bake it for 18 to 22 minutes or until they are golden brown. Let these rest in the pan for 5 to 10 minutes slightly because 1, you risk burning yourself, and number 2, they may fall apart, so you want to let them rest a good 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to flip them onto a clean cooling rack and you're going to set this pan aside and you're going to flip them over either using your hand or another cooling rack. Now, I do recommend trying to wait at least 10 to 15 minutes before you start to eat these. They are best if you cool them down and then reheat them up because when you open up fresh baked bread, if they're still hot, they can be gummy on the inside because it hasn't had a chance to fully set. However, not anybody listens to that rule, and these taste delicious hot. I'm really excited about this recipe, and you know we need to have some taste testers. So you know what time it is. Let's say hello to our sous chef Maggie and her pals Raymond and Roxanne. Maggie is always excited for fresh baked goods, and here is her sidekick Roxanne. Raymond is around, but he, as usual, is on the floor. He has the 4 on the floor down pat. You can barely get him to get his feet off the floor. He is such a well-mannered dog. Not cheeky like my little girls here. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this recipe if you give it a go. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy baking.